Are you struggling to come up with original content week in and week out? Start a podcast. Interview your ideal clients, let them talk about what they care about most, and never run out of content ideas again. Learn more at sweetfishmedia.com.
You're listening to the B2B Growth Show, a podcast dedicated to helping B2B executives achieve explosive growth. Whether you're looking for techniques and strategies or tools and resources, you've come to the right place. I'm James Carberry.
And I'm Jonathan Green.
Let's get into the show.
Welcome back to the B2B Growth Show. Today we're joined by Paul Doghramji. Paul is the founder of SOAR. Paul, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Jonathan. It's great to be here, man.
It's a pleasure to have you on the show. I mean, we've just gotten to speak briefly offline. I'm already sort of blown away by your enthusiasm and passion for today's subject. We are going to be talking about optimizing sales in startups to create growth. And I think this is going to be a very valuable topic to delve into. You've seen a lot of personal success with SOAR lately. We were just sort of scratching the surface of that earlier. But before we jump into today's topic, again, optimizing sales and startups to create growth, Paul, maybe you can tell us a little about what you and the SOAR team are up to these days.
Exactly, man. So we actually are working on one of our first case studies with a small headset company in LA called Ready Headset Go. They do refurbish headsets. They, repair them for large enterprise companies, like NBC and Universal and larger clients like that are on the West Coast, which is really cool. And, a couple of things we're helping them do is they have a small sales force, just helping them build that up, what to look for, how to recruit, how to train them, onboard them fast so they don't spend too much money there because they're a small company with enterprise clients trying to grow. So we're working with them, focusing on their sales team and, optimizing them so that they can grow the right way without spending too much on the growing pains. It's going great.
That's fantastic. Well, again, one of the reasons we're thrilled to have you on the show today. And Paul, let's just dive right into it here. Number one, the first thing that we were going to be talking about is kind of the main issues that are hindering growth in sales teams.
Yep, absolutely, man. And that's a great question because in a lot of our research at SOAR, because what we do is we watch a lot of webinars, we absorb a lot of content that's online, to factor kind of into our presentation with what we do to optimize and to show that this is a really big issue. And this is a reason why sales leaders get so stressed out and have, try to figure out what's going on. And some of these statistics can be a bit jarring, but they come from, a combination of Forrester Research, CSO Insights, Sales Hacker, or the Harvard Business Review. So it's kind of a culmination of all those. But the first one is that 65% of salespeople's time is spent on non-selling activity, right? And when you think about that, your first reaction is, no way, that's impossible. That's way too much time. But then if you take a second to I know, right? It's there's no way. But think about it for 2 seconds. And when you think about it and you're a sales leader, look at your floor. Just watch the floor for 20 minutes, right? And of 65% of that 20 minutes, just see how much of their time was spent actually on a selling activity. And when I say a selling activity, talking to a client, prospecting, organizing your pipeline, vigorously, not just staring at it and being I don't know what I'm going to do, which happens, and look at it and look at them and see how many of them are on Facebook, how many of them are just on LinkedIn. In fact, how many of them are just researching a company they're about to call for a prospect call? That's something that I see a lot in sales teams is that a lot of these account executives are well, look, listen, I want to be as prepared as possible. So I'm just going to research the heck out of this next company. It's dude, you have 100 dials to make. You're going to tell me you're going to research 100 companies to the bone for each cold call that is going to result in God knows what the outcome is. Maybe you're not even going to get a DM. Dude, you know what I'm saying? And that's a non-selling activity. That's just them staring at a LinkedIn that's not going to produce any revenue, right? So when you think about it, it's really an issue that sales leaders can easily fix just by observing their teams a little bit more, just kind of seeing what's going on and helping them just be a little bit more productive and focus on dealing with the client more rather than just kind of being more prepared. Because improv is a lot of sales. You got to be on the go. You got to be smooth. You got to rock and roll. So, just do it. Just jump into it, right?
Well,
now the second one.
Let me just ask real quickly. Then, so there's got to be some element of preparation, then, right? Are you kind of making the argument then that you can do research until your eyes bleed, but I mean, that is
Right.
still essentially a non-sales sort of activity that can be
Mm-hmm.
finely tuned, can be what is
Right.
the solution there?
That's a great question, man. And so what I do, or what I've gotten myself to be able to do with the research angle, is prepare everything way ahead of time. If you want to research your stuff, research it on your own time before you go into work and start prospecting. Do it then, because if you're curious and you want to learn, great. Do it on your own time, number one. Or number two, get your research capabilities to the point where it doesn't take you very long. For example, if I don't know something about a company, and I want to know a little bit more about what they do, because I think it'll help me on the call. I'll go right to their website for literally just 1 minute.
Yeah.
Just go to the About Me section, read really quick how old they are, what is their main industry, like, is there kind of a contact info in there, maybe like Jim, something, a little shorter name, a Mike, a Dave, instead of a David, some kind of a relatable information for literally just a minute, and then boom, right into the cold call. And that's a maybe if I feel like I need it. If not, just jump in, because you should know who you're calling ahead of time. You should know you can look at the name, you know what I'm saying, of the businesses. It normally gives it away. But use those capabilities, use your observational skills to be able to put kind of things together as you're rocking and rolling and you're grinding, because that'll allow you to kind of do the research, as you do other things, almost with like a multitasking thing. But if you need more, only take about a minute to absorb that info, because it's a cold call. You're trying to set the meeting. You're not trying to do something else, just that.
Okay.
So,
Got it. All right. So these are some of the main issues that are immediately hindering growth in the sales team, things that you have observed firsthand.
yeah.
And it almost felt like we were sort of touching on this idea of the data sort of behind the sales team. Like you said, 65% of the activities being non-sales activities. But I would imagine at least part of that is searching through, cataloging, dealing with the data. And so you have a point about companies understanding how meticulous their data should or should not be.
Mm-hmm. And that's one thing that I've seen that's really, it confuses me, because, I've worked for startups that have been run by guys, like from Goldman Sachs, McKinsey Consulting, where their insights, with their sales stacks and their pipelines just make so much sense, but their numbers tell them exactly where the problems are. And, there are other companies that I've worked for, and, with SOAR, and just even on my own in my personal career, where they track things like, I'll look at their sales teams and it's like, yep, these are their dials and, their meetings and their closing and their closed deals. It's like, where's everything else? They're like, what everything else? What else should we track? It's like, well, listen, how do you know how many DMs they're reaching? It's like, well, if they're getting meetings set, it's like, that's kind of the same thing. No, it's not kind of the same thing. You don't know. What if they're getting to a bunch of decision makers and they're striking out all over the place and they're not getting into meeting sets? Well, that's a bad salesperson. No, it's not. Just someone that needs some coaching in a certain part of the sales stack, a certain part of the pipeline, and I've seen companies where when they know that data is there, and they just tend to that rep, and I've seen some amazing sales managers find that out, see the insights, go and tend to that, and then just fixing that one little thing turns like a rep that has a broken wheel or a broken leg written to a top 1% type person. And that's what takes the salespeople, the sales teams, from kind of leveling out and going down and not being super consistent to having reps that are passionate and just skyrocketing. That's the other thing too, is that not understanding your insights can lead to more turnover. For example, if you didn't understand that, if you didn't track that stuff, you'd say, hey, my salespeople aren't that great. Maybe we should just clean house. Well, that's not the case. You just don't know because you're not tracking it deep enough, and it can go deeper than that. All the way down to even no answer. How many no answers are you getting? How many gatekeepers are you getting? How many gatekeeper conversations are you getting? To know all of that stuff, just so you understand exactly what each person on your team is doing. And then if you're on a vice president level or executive level, exactly what's going on with each one of your teams. On even more of a granular level, those reports at the end of the day for executives and even the managers, even the salespeople should have those. So everyone's aligned, everyone's on the same page with who's doing what. And that way you guys can all use the data and just grow, and the number one thing before anybody can grow is to stay consistent. And, lack of consistency is another thing, but, just to throw that in there.
Yeah. It makes a lot of sense talking about, like, you don't have this isn't just a bad sales rep, there could be just one thing that you need to
Yeah.
fix. If you had the data, you'd be able to dive into it. You'd be able to instead of
Right.
starting from scratch, which is like, what a waste. Well, not even just what a waste, but like what a missed opportunity to, like you said, to have someone that is 90% of the way there and just needs a little bit of fine tuning. But I am curious because I am fascinated by this idea that, there is so much data. There are so many metrics. There are so many things that we have the capability to track. And at the end of the day, there are also just so many hours that we can utilize. Do you ever find that there are, when it comes to meticulous data, do you ever find that there are things, metrics, statistics, pieces of data that people tend to get hung up on that maybe they shouldn't, that maybe there are like more important things to be thinking about?
That's the thing. I've never really noticed that to be that much of an issue where someone's focusing on the wrong part of data. The only time I've seen that is when they just track, like I said, a too vague or general view, like dials in general, not like, DMs, no answer, fresh leads, this, that, whatever. Like without tracking that, it's just, they get hung up on, I don't see a conversion from, meetings to closes. It's like, well, and then they get obsessed with the close rate. So, if it's anything, it's just close rate. Everyone's always obsessed with close rate. But, when you track, everyone's obsessed with that. But when you think about what goes into it, it's, God, if you just track your data a little bit harder, a little bit more, you spread it up, create new things. Be like, okay, think about the experience. Okay, what's going into prospecting? Well, you know what? We actually talked to a gatekeeper, but also a receptionist. That's not really the gatekeeper in our line of work. Well, you know what? Maybe we should track the data of how many receptionists we're getting. Maybe our leads go right only to receptionists and we can't get past them. Maybe we should try a different avenue. That is like a whole world of thought that just came, and you can even create a new metric for yourself that may make it so much easier on your sales teams and your leaders just right there that that can really just change the game.
Yeah.
And help you understand why you're hung up on one thing.
Yep.
Right. But people don't do that. They get hung up, like I said, on just close rate.
Just the close rate. It's deeper.
Higher.
Yeah. But it's deeper than that. You got to be more meticulous than that. You got to pay attention to these main issues that are hindering growth in your sales team. And I know that you had just very briefly mentioned the sales stack and the idea that that's what you need. You need to optimize your sales stack. But I know you have it. You have a couple of thoughts on that as well.
Absolutely. So like the sales stack is so important. And it's one of the things, it's a term that's thrown around that I don't think a lot of people understand because it's kind of new. And I didn't even understand it. I had to look it up and research it myself. I heard it first like on Sales Hacker. But the sales stack is a pipeline basically, but it also includes the lead gen, the lead in part. And one of the biggest things that I see companies doing that could save them so much money if they just understood how to do this would be to internalize their lead gen. For example, website scraping is a thing. You can literally use Chrome extensions or hire a sales engineer, not someone to help you with the hardware of sales. No, some guy that, actually codes, can scrape the website, can go to your targets, really kind of like a satellite in the sky kind of dude for the internet, right? Who just kind of shoots the targets and compiles them into Excel spreadsheets. That is so much cheaper than spending tons of money on lists and doing trial and error and doing the whole phone book method type deal with the prospecting. Internalizing lead gen can help you understand so many more insights and can lead to creating the metrics that you'll need to, get deeper understanding and deeper insights into each one of your, salespeople's stacks, each one of their pipelines. And so you can understand how to help them a lot better. So internalizing the lead gen will really, really take optimizing your organization to the next level. But a lot of people don't know how to do it. And a lot of people don't know that, those kind of roles exist because the sales engineer, I've seen two totally different kinds of sales engineers and they do totally different things. I've seen one type of sales engineer work to help, install certain things like a sales support. And then I've seen another type of sales engineer who works closely with marketing to generate leads, right? So it depends on what the understanding is in your organization. But if you get one of the, a sales engineer in your org to start, coding through the internet, scraping, leads, getting specific data, enriching those leads with better insights. I mean, you can necessarily take your bad data with your leads all the way down to 0%. And I imagine that if you have any percentage at all in your company with your reps of bad data, this will save so much time and money. It's ridiculous. And that right there will help you grow, because you can allocate that cost that you're spending on tons and tons of leads that probably just go nowhere to other things like growth. Boom.
Well, that's fantastic, Paul. You're making a lot of sense, and I said it at the very beginning. It's just I love having guests on the show that are enthusiastic and passionate about what they're doing. You've obviously seen a lot of success recently with SOAR, which is fantastic. And here's a question that we have been asking a lot of our guests this year, and you as a founder, you as sort of a leader. We've been curious about this idea of legacy, and I'd like to ask you sort of what you are hoping your legacy is going to be at the end of the day, whether that is personal, professional, or even a combination of the two.
That, Jonathan, that is an awesome question, and this kind of circles right into the reason why me and some of my older sales friends started SOAR, which the name literally is Sales Optimizations, Analytics, and Resources, right? Which is what it's all in the name. But we saw a need because we worked for a startup, like in the beginning of our careers. And we really grew close together because when you're in a startup, you fight for funding. You fight to keep your job basically. And that creates a lot of cohesion between you and your teammates in the trenches and this and that. And when we got out of it, we moved on and we all became in leader positions and grew in our careers. We saw like a lot of startups we worked for making tons of mistakes and having great ideas, like such awesome ideas, but they made just like dumb mistakes, like they didn't internalize the lead gen, spent so much money on that, spent money on marketing they didn't have to, took risks where they didn't have to, this and that, when they could just ask or listened or had better collaboration or something. And so what we did was we decided to get together and say, you know what, let's go. And I mean, we're amazing salespeople. We can sell ourselves. We can sell it. Let's go and help these guys out. Let's go show them what to do. Let's go show them that there needs to be more data. There needs to be done this way. Needs to be done this way. Not in really a consulting way, but to like optimize with the leaders. Like, hey guys, look, check this out. What do you think of this? And kind of like make a plan and then help them put it into place with them based on what they've got, which is how the SOAR method kind of works and why it's in 5 steps. But, you can go check that out on the website. But us giving back, to the startups and, maybe help save an idea that could really make a really big impact on, some industry or even the rest of the world is exactly what we want to leave behind, or what I want to leave behind in my legacy, which is why I started SOAR and then, got everybody else involved, because that's something that, I've just seen some ideas die that could be awesome, but mistakes just happen that way. So hopefully we'll be able to help some awesome companies out, and really just make a difference, man. That's the thing. That's what we can leave behind.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a brilliant legacy, and it I just even love the way that you sort of phrased it, like save an idea. And there are some ideas out there with startups that could definitely change the world. And if they just sort of, having a good idea isn't necessarily enough. You gotta make the right decisions to, to make it profitable, to make it marketable, to sell it, And I think that's fantastic. It's a fantastic legacy. Paul, thank you again so much for coming on here, sharing your wisdom with me, with our listeners. If anyone is interested in following up with you, they want to find out more about today's topic, they want to find out more about SOAR, they want to find out more about you, what's the best way for them to go about doing that?
Absolutely. So you can just search me on LinkedIn, Paul Doghramji, but with a junior, because my dad and I do have the same name, but you'll know that he's not me. He looks a lot older. He has a black mustache. It's a lot different. He's also a doctor, so I'm not one of those. So it's pretty defining. But you can look me up on LinkedIn, or you can check out our website, soarsales.com. That's SOAR sales.com, or just feel free to email me if you have questions, you want to inquire about anything, just want to talk, get some advice at paul@soarsales.com.
Fantastic. We'll definitely have soarsales.com in the show notes. Paul, thank you again so much for your time today. It was an absolute pleasure having you on the show.
Thank you, Jonathan. Absolutely, man. I really appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
There are lots of ways to build a community, and we've chosen to build the B2B growth community through this podcast. But because of the way podcasts work, it's really hard to engage with our listeners. And without engagement, it's tough to build a great community. So here's what we've decided to do. We're organizing small dinners across the country with our listeners and guests. No sales pitches, no agenda, just great conversations with like-minded people. We'll talk business, we'll talk family, we'll talk goals and dreams. We'll build friendships. So if you'd like to be a part of a B2B growth dinner in a city near you, go to b2bgrowthdinners.com. That's b2bgrowthdinners.com. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.